Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. I'm Tundu Abiola.
And I am Oji Akpe.
President Muhammadu Buhari is getting ready to be sworn in for a second term in office, having been declared winner of the last presidential election by the Independent National Electoral Commission. It has been a very eventful 4 years of the Buhari presidency, a period during which the economy and security of lives and property of the citizens underwent profound transformation at critical points. However, it is his self-imposed anti-corruption war that the president continues to push as the signature imprint of his administration so far. How well has he performed in the discharge of his responsibilities in those areas? Well, to explore this further, we're now being joined by Sola Kuti, who is a new media and political consultant who served as special assistant to Senator Tokunbo Ogunbanjo in the Senate between 2003 and 2007. He also served as a member of the media team of the People's Democratic Party Presidential Campaign Council in 2011 and 2015. Welcome to the program, Sola.
Good morning, Tundu. Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Now, let's start with the elections. From the INEC side, how would you rate them in terms of transparency and fairness? But I also want you to assess them from the side of the electorate, the public, in terms of our apathy and what caused that.
Okay. Thank you. I'd rate the elections, if I was going to score the elections, I'd probably score them about 20%. I mean, we could see from the beginning that there were issues with the elections. They had to be postponed at 2 a.m. in the morning when people were already asleep and ready to go and vote. And even after the postponement, you could see, anything that could go wrong did go wrong. The elections were marred by violence. You had videos trending everywhere online. There were, I think, a record number of elections that were cancelled and needed to be rerun. And, that just tells you a story that I think, in my view, that the current government does not deserve to be sitting as re-elected, really. I think so. I'd score INEC at the best 20%.
And yet, those are the results that INEC announced, that this government was re-elected, whether or not you believe they deserve to be. What would you say to those who allowed that to happen? Because being a new media consultant, you're aware of social media being awash with all kinds of hashtags. Everybody is active on social media, but not so active on the day of the elections.
Yeah, I think it was disappointing, to say the least, to look at our figures, registered voters, and see the turnout. I think even more so, the apathy was evident. But, I mean, you can't blame people as such. I mean, I was, one of the people that was advocating for people to go out and vote regardless of what happens. But when people's lives are at stake and their safety cannot be guaranteed by a government, in fact, the government apparatus was used to basically harass the people and prevent them from exercising their franchise. So when you look at that, I can't tell anybody to go out and be killed. I wouldn't be right to advise that. But all in all, I'd say that it's clear that the elections were far from free, and people had the right to basically not want to go out to vote if they felt they couldn't be secure.
And yet, if you complain and do nothing, nothing will change. So it's a catch-22. We have what happened in South Africa.
I know.
Yes.
I say that as well.
Yes. Look at the elections in South Africa, where 6 million youths did not register to vote, I guess in protest against the ANC, which has been a disappointment to them. But because of that apathy, ANC was re-elected. But I want you to clarify your point on violence. What, to you, was at the root cause of the violence that was witnessed during the elections?
I think it was clear that the APC administration was unpopular with Nigerians. I mean, I think it was crystal clear to people that people were tired, they were disappointed, and the APC was going to lose the election. So the only way the APC could forestall this was to use this apparatus of state to basically control what happened on election day. They wanted to stop people from voting as much as they could so that they could use manufactured results. And, you know, for me, if a government is unpopular, you know, the only way it can win an election is through violence and intimidation of voters. I mean, if not, I don't see why soldiers will be going up and down in River State, shooting citizens, stealing ballot papers. I mean, these ballot boxes, this is not just now somebody saying, in telling stories. These things were proven. Videos were shown. People were killed. The lecturer in River State was killed. I mean, it's an election. And if, I always say that, I've said this even while PDP was in power, that the only thing that government can do to stay in power is to be good to the people. And APC came on the back of, you know, a lot of lofty promises, which, as we all know, they failed to deliver, you know, at least 90% or maybe even 98% of them. And so obviously they had to resort to, you know, high-handed tactics to be able to, you know, win the election.
Okay. Well, good morning, Sola. I'd like your assessment on the president. You know, he came on board with the commitment to revamp the economy, restore security in the Northeast, and fight corruption. Well, let's start with your assessment on the economy. Can you tell me his performance so far?
Okay, I mean, the economy, the figures, statistics speak for itself. High unemployment figures, you know, slow growth rates. You know, people are leaving the country. Investors, you know, don't have the confidence in the markets. I mean, it's, for me, I'm not surprised, I must say, because everything that is going on today, I predicted, you know, in 2014, because I know that the president does not have the capacity to run the country. I think he also didn't put together a solid team. Well, on paper, the team looks a bit solid with a few stars here and there, but in reality, you know, it's obvious that the president did not have a solid team, and he did not have a think tank to help him, you know, build a team. You know, the people are leaving the country. Every time I hear people writing exams to leave the country to go to Canada, doctors are leaving in droves. You know, the businesses are closing. You know, it's a really bad story, and you know, I wouldn't want to be in Nigeria today, you know, as it is.
All right. What about insecurity? What is your assessment on his performance?
And I think this is the one that really pierces my heart. I mean, this is a man who came to power the president came to power on the promise that, oh, you know, he's a general and he will do what the previous president, Jonathan, failed to do because he was a civilian, so he didn't understand security. And, you know, to think that, I mean, I'll use an example. I saw a video of helicopters escorting a train from Kaduna to Abuja, or Abuja to Kaduna, I don't know which way. You know, and people cannot even drive to Kaduna. I mean, if you've ever lived in Abuja, you would understand what Kaduna is home to a lot of people. So every weekend, people would go to Kaduna, you know, easily. Now I hear, you know, people cannot even apply that route. You know, there's insecurity everywhere in the country. People are getting kidnapped. A professor at the OAU was kidnapped a couple of weeks ago by, you know, 4 really armed men in Ife, not even in Kaduna now or in Borno. I mean, you can see the insecurity has spread across the country, and, you know, people are, you know, really afraid of and fear for their lives. You know, people don't want to travel, they don't want to move around. And, you know, that is also affecting the economy, because if people don't feel safe, then activity is going to slow down.
Okay, what about war against corruption? I know the president has been credited for his war against his anti-graft war. Would you say that he has delivered on his promise?
I'd say that the record speaks for itself. You can see yourself that there's not been any conviction from any cases started by this government. Dasuki has not been taken to court. You know, all the people that are charged for supposedly stealing arms money are still walking the streets. But what is even, you know, more painful is that within the president's own cabinet, there's been cases of fraud. The SGF was relieved after about a year of back and forthing for corruption against IDPs, which is, you know, similar to what Dasuki has been held for 3 years. I mean, the president has demonstrated the lack of will to actually, you know, fight corruption the way it should be fought. Because if I was president, the first example I would set would be from people within my own cabinet, so that nobody will feel safe to, to want to be corrupt. But the president has shown that all he's doing is using the corruption, mantra to fight opposition and people who speak against him and people who are in other political parties are challenging the APC. And even with that, because the cases are so badly put together and it's a witch hunt more or less, you can see that there have been no convictions at all. I mean, by now, after almost 4 years, I'd expect Dasuki to at least have been convicted by a court. This calls for questions. And for me, I think, again, I'll just say that the APC mouths off a lot on all sorts of issues, but they've not been able to deliver on anything.
Well, earlier you said you don't believe the president had a solid team when referring to his cabinet. As he dissolves the cabinet this week, what kind of advice would you give him if you were in a position to do so regarding who he should now include and who he should leave out?
I think some people have to go for sure. I don't think this cabinet deserves to come back. And if it does deserve to come back, it has to be properly. I mean, let me give you an example, a simple example. Look at someone like Babatunde Fashola, who was, governor of Lagos State. He has 3 ministries under his watch, and none of the ministries have performed well. You can start from the power ministry. The roads are, a mess. And housing, I've not really seen much from there. There's no point appointing people just for the sake of, political expediency. Or let's just give this guy an appointment because he helped me win an election. It's also because it's more than ministers. Even if the president brings, the best hands from the UK and the US, if he has the same mindset, he's destined for failure. Because at the end of the day, the government seems not to have a plan. We're still hearing after 4 years, 16 years of PDP and all of that kind of stuff. By now, we should be talking about what we've done with our loans have gone to about 23 trillion naira. So, when you think about the amount of debt, you'd expect, I have no problems with debt. I always say, if you invest, get borrowed to invest, then that's fine. But when you think about the amount of debt that this government has incurred, and then you don't see any projects, I think the biggest project the president has launched since he came into power, the airport project, which that the government had no input in anyway. They didn't pay a dime for it. It was already prepaid by the Jonathan government. Oh. They had no input. It was basically a deal between the previous administration and the Chinese government, and they had, they did a counterpart funding arrangement where Nigeria put $100 million down, and the Chinese would put $400 million, and they would build on their own. The reason why the previous government did that was because they anticipated that if they didn't do that, look at that example, Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, which is a project that should have been completed by now, has not been completed. If it had been put under the same arrangement, I believe it would have been completed by now. That just shows you that this government does not have an idea of how to run a country, and there's a clear absence of leadership.
Well, you referred to that, the phrase that we hear quite a bit from the government about the 16 years of PDP's misrule, as they would describe it. Are you going to dismiss that? The fact that the government does claim that PDP dug us into this hole, which is why it's taking a long time to get us out of it? I always say that it is possible to blame somebody for doing something, but the minute you take over government, you start to earn your own revenue. For example, we didn't have a 22 trillion naira debt in 2015 when President Buhari came into power. So the point I'm making is that he's borrowed basically to cover, let's say, the deficiencies in the economy and the lack of capital to finance to carry out capital projects. But there are no capital projects to show for it. I haven't seen any. But the point I'm saying, you can say, we had some. But people have taken over other states as well from PDP governors, and you just have to get on with your job. It's almost like saying, I got robbed yesterday, but I got paid a new salary today. You've got fresh cash, you can inject into the economy, you can build roads, you borrowed money, you took loans, you can essentially put that into use and forget about what anybody else has done. They've also been making a lot of noise about recoveries, and I expect that these recoveries by now
would have been tabulated in some form to show Nigerians that this is actually the amounts we recovered. These are receipts that for the recoveries go back to the CBN. This is what we have done with the money. When they even collected Abacha loot and they went and shared it in the markets, I mean, that just speaks volumes. You recover stolen money, but you say you're doing some sort of intervention program, and you go into the markets and start sharing, I don't know what, something sounds like $20 or $30 to traders to boost their business. I mean, it just shows you that the government doesn't have any ideas.
All right, so the National Assembly, both Senate and the House of Representatives, have won a lot of criticism stemming from their generous pay and many allowances. Can you assess the performance of the Saraki-led National Assembly, please?
I'll tell you the strange thing. I worked in National Assembly quite a few years ago, so I understand how it works. And yes, I do know that there's this talk about the allowances and how the National Assembly should be clipped and things like that. But I would say, surprisingly, even despite all the intimidation, the harassment, I think this assembly has done quite well. Like I always say to people, look, you only have to look at people's records. They've passed the most bills. They've tried to have the you see the Senate President has really done well to try and keep a good image, even though he was dragged before the CCT. But he's tried to, go out there, speak to... In fact, the Senate President behaves more like the President should be behaving, to be honest. And I think that the Senate and the have worked very well together, again, because they refused for the leaders to be imposed. So you see that harmonious relationship. And they've tried to work well with the President, despite the fact that he didn't, agree to them being... Saraki and Dogara being the leaders. But they tried to work well with him. Even after they were elected, they went to see him. They tried to pass bills that were in the interest of the country. For instance, the Electoral Amendment Act, which the president refused to assent. There's so many bills the president has rejected. I think that, in the history of the country, this is the best Senate and House of Assembly that we've had. House of Reps that we've had, I beg your pardon.
All right, so what would you expect to happen during the leadership into both chambers of the National Assembly come June?
I'll expect fireworks. And, it's not going to be pretty. The presidency is going to do everything to win this one this time. They've learned from the lessons of the past. But I think, again, governance is going to suffer again. Because there is no reason, and I've said this several times, the PDP itself, who the APC talks about the 16 years, have shown through the high-handedness approach to the National Assembly, which has failed at least 4 or 5 times, that there is no point imposing leaders in the National Assembly. Let the Assembly choose for themselves so that at least throughout the course of the Assembly, there can be peace and harmony and they can work well with the presidency. I don't know why the presidency is trying to dabble in and choose people. And I think that is very dangerous because it makes nonsense of the separation of powers. The idea is that the judiciary, which now has been hijacked by the presidency, and also the National Assembly should have their autonomy to run. In fact, they're supposed to checkmate the presidency and checkmate each other, not to work as like having my own person as the Senate President so that he can rubber stamp anything I do. I mean, that will set a dangerous precedent. I think my prayer is that the idea to impose Lawan and Bajabe Amila fails woefully. I think that would be good for Nigeria.
You just said quite a bit about the role of the Senate President and what have you, and creating precedents. Well, there was a precedent created in 2015 with the emergence of Senator Bukola Saraki with the support of PDP members. And the ruling party, the APC, felt shortchanged when the Deputy Senate President emerged from the opposition party, PDP. And now PDP has expressed their determination to be considered for leadership roles in both houses, but has gone quiet of recent. Is there any update on this?
I think it's a legitimate call. Because you see, at the end of the day, I always say this, that having worked in the Senate, we used to have something we call the banana peel. You see, it is in the interest of whoever emerges as Senate President or Speaker of the House to have the support of a party that has sort of like 35, 40% of the members. Because you see, it's probably easy to install a Senate president, but it's easier to remove a Senate president if you don't have the support of the opposition party in that kind of number. So it's what happened when I always ask people this question: when Emefiele was elected deputy Senate president, how did it affect Nigeria? Did people die? Did people fall ill? The man only, sat, a few times when Senate President Saraki was not there. So why do we fight for things that have no value on the citizens? If the APC really is out there to help Nigeria develop and help the citizens live a better life, this should be the least of their problems. I mean, I would even ignore the Senate and focus more on areas like insecurity and the economy. I mean, I don't think there's any benefit that will come out of it. I mean, this won't end well, let me put it like that. If the APC manages to impose the Senate president, he'll be sitting on that same, ready to sleep on that banana peel.
You played a key role in the evolution of the PDP in recent times. Would you say that the party has reorganized well enough to be given another chance by Nigerians?
You see, I think, again, I always say this, that any party that is in power should be able to run a country if it has, the good intentions. Yes, the PDP was in power and made a lot of mistakes. I'm not going to deny that. But the truth is that the country was doing far better than this. And I've always said that I think what we need to do is to continue to promote this type of democracy that seeks this separation. I keep on that separation is so important. Because don't forget that even while Obasanjo was president, the same PDP-led House of Assembly and House of Reps, I beg your pardon, and Senate, where, at loggerheads with the president. That is what, a country is supposed to do, and we will develop. I think the PDP under Atiku would have done, much better than Buhari is doing. I mean, nobody is a saint or nobody has all the answers, but even the approach to issues, you can see even now that the former Vice President Atiku was not declared winner and is challenged. You can see how, he's still making progress. He's still saying the right things while the man who's running the country is there saying that I've done well and, you should take it or leave it, is blaming, the army is blaming politicians for, I mean, look, if I were president, I would have fired the security chiefs by now. Because at the end of the day, they failed in their duty. They have no excuse, except if the president is telling us that the reason that they have not performed is because he has failed to do a good job. I think, the honest truth that PDP, I thought that even though they say 16 years of PDP were bad, but I thought they would have taken some key lessons from the successes in PDP and used that to just float along for the first 4 years and just stabilize the economy. They didn't, look, the truth is that they didn't have to do much because the PDP had been properly demonized. And I think that Nigerians really looked forward to seeing, Vice President Atiku, former Vice President Atiku, as president with all his key promises, bringing young people in, things that you don't even see the president addressing till today because he really doesn't care. That's the truth. Bringing more women into government and then also, changing the mindset of government, teaching the younger generation how to run a country so that they can then rise up. And look at the guys that have worked with Jonathan over the years. Look at how well they're doing on the world. So look at Okonjo-Iweala. Akim Adesina is the president of the African Development Bank. Recently, Dr. Pate was also appointed by the World Bank. It just tells you that these people have grown and the world respects them more than we do. So if you tell me that the previous PDP government failed, I'll always show you examples of what everybody that was in the government is doing today. The world recognized, and people know that these guys were solid when they were in government.
I caught your Freudian slip there. You were about to say President Atiku, which leads me to my next question about the presidential. I caught you about the presidential election tribunals. What are the chances of Atiku Abubakar and PDP? Let's look at the latest news coming from that, which is that PDP and Atiku Abubakar have filed a fresh application to get access to INEC's server. obviously you know all the facts, but for the sake of our viewers, I'll just go over the fact that the Atiku Abubakar and PDP's argument is that the results that INEC declared are not the results stored on the server. And INEC has dismissed this claim, accused PDP of hacking the server, and said that besides, the election results were not transmitted electronically and they were not stored. So that is one stumbling block that is happening in this tribunal so far, because the Atiku team has not been allowed to access these servers. The second issue that has arisen from the tribunal so far is the President of the Court of Appeal's inclusion in the 5-man panel. Justice Zainab Bulkachua is married to the Senator-elect of Adamawa under the platform of APC and has been asked to recuse herself. The matter is slated for hearing on 22nd of May. What do you think the prospects are in this current climate?
Okay. I mean, exactly. I'll start with number 2. You know, when you think that, you know, someone whose husband is a senator-elect, you know, needs to be told to recuse herself from a case so sensitive that concerns the political party that her husband won on. If her husband was a senator-elect in PDP, do you think the APC will leave her there? I mean, she as a very experienced justice, no disrespect to her, should have stepped down already. I mean, Justice Mary Odili is a good example of this. When the Rivers State case was on, she recused herself from the case, you know, because her husband had been governor in Rivers State. So she said, you know what, I'm not going to be on this panel. Look, we need decency brought back into our judiciary. We need people with she's just one person on the panel. I would have walked away ages ago. And just showed you the level of impunity that this government tolerates. This, you know, rides on. And that's why I keep on saying President Atiku, because the more people I speak to, the more people tell me, I don't know how Buhari could have won the election. And these are just clear facts. And that's why I believe that we have a very good case at the tribunal, not just because of that, because of 2 things as well. Forget about the server. Let's put that as an aside matter. We know that INEC, we've got evidence that INEC did say they were going to transmit over the server. So I'm not going to even make that an issue, that the courts will obviously rule on that. And that is not even the relevant. The relevant thing is that we also knew at least 3-4 months before the election how the elections were going to be rigged. I mean, it is you know, unheard of that the man who is senator-elect in Niger State is the same man who is supplying INEC and providing logistics for INEC. So you must ask the question, the first time the election failed, was this a clever ploy by this man who is not only supplying INEC with sensitive election materials, including your PVC, your card reader, but he's also in charge of, he has about 5 or 6 companies, also in charge of logistics. Why is that not something that should never be done? That a man who is running for an election in APC should also be somebody that is supplying. I mean, when I think of these things, it's just absurd. People, you know, you've got to look at best practices, and Nigeria is everything but best practice. So when you look at things like that, and you look at how INEC has manipulated the elections, look at the reruns in Kano, you know, this has been the worst election ever. I don't see how any fair-minded judge will look at the case. I mean, obviously, I know they look at the technicalities and all of that, but we look at a case like this and not know that there's no way APC won the election. So I think it's going to be, and I would say it's going to be, if there's fairness and decency in the judiciary, that PDP will be declared winner.
All right, well, Mr. Sola, beyond criticism of the administration's policies, is there no area of national life where you can at least commend President Buhari and his team?
I'd say maybe the emails is racked up. I mean, we have to be honest. I mean, what is there to celebrate in Nigeria today, you know? The only thing that Buhari has done is travel a lot. President Buhari, I beg your pardon, I don't mean to be insensitive, has done is travel a lot, meet people, and then propaganda. Yes, I can give them that. They've done a lot of propaganda. Oh, we're doing a yuan swap deal. This person has signed up with us. Microsoft is now selling shares in Nigeria. They just say all sorts of things. If the president missed Bill Gates, is a big deal. You know, for me, honestly, I mean, I always say to people, especially journalists like yourselves, that ask yourself the question as well. What is it that we have to celebrate in Nigeria today? You know, I have tons of people who, you know, even the people that are supporting APC, their children are schooling in London here. You know, so I always ask them, I say, you know, and you people say, oh, Buhari is doing well. Why aren't your children in public schools or even in a private school in Nigeria or a private university? Why are they in the UK? You know, why are you still, you know, worried about your security, still worried about, look at every sector, look at aviation. I mean, Nigeria should have been growing, but instead things have gone. Honestly, I can't think of an area, and I'm not being, you know, unkind about this. I can't think of an area that I'd say that, you know, the APC or President Buhari has done really well. Maybe the people around him who are, you know, making money from government will continue to praise him for that. But I personally can, on behalf of Nigerians, I say the president owes us an apology for his lack of commitment to the cause, and also, you know, for the arrogance displayed as well. I mean, it's one thing to get F9, but then to tell people you got an A1, you know, and say it so arrogantly. When you see people dying, you see people, you know, committing suicide, the hunger rate, the poverty rate, we have the highest out of school. I mean, just name it. I mean, it's so upsetting for me. Not because, I mean, I understand that sometimes there are challenges that are beyond, you know, human capacity, but that it's the attitude towards those challenges that matter to me. That you see somebody struggling to, you know, do something to just make things better for the Nigerian people. But instead, you sit on a high horse and tell us, oh, you've done well, you score yourself well, APC has performed. You saw the APC governors even giving themselves an award. I mean, which APC state can you see in the whole of the country? Even Lagos State is a big refuse dump that you can even applaud and say these people have done well. You know, I mean, and this is the kind of, you know, narcissistic behavior that the APC has basically continued. And that's why they couldn't win the election, and they had to basically shoot Nigerians to get their mandate.
Well, earlier you said that the government, the Buhari administration, had failed 98%. I see that you're not even willing to concede even 2% to the government. So let's move on to Godwin Emefiele.
I can't find it. I thought that I must apologize for that. That must have been an error, because I can't even find the 2%.
It appears that you can't. So Godwin Emefiele, his nomination by the president for a second and final term has now been confirmed by the Senate. With a lot of effusive praise directed at him, are you a supporter or critic of his first term as CBN governor? And what would you like to see in this second term?
Okay, I think what the Senate has just done is called checkmate. You could see that the president renominated Godwin Emefiele because he's been a good rubber stamp CBN governor. That's all. Because when you think about, look, the first thing I always say, you know, that really angered me about this government was the foreign exchange policy. This government came to power and said it is sacrilege, basically, to be defending, you know, our naira with our foreign reserves. So they stopped it. They said the naira should go into free fall. You know, the funny thing is that you know that the majority of business people were affected. I know people that took loans in US dollars for $1 million, and because of this jump, were owing $2 million, $2.5, $3 million even. You know, I mean, when you do that to the business community, you essentially destroyed the engine room of your economy. And Godwin Emefiele was CBN governor when that happened. I would never forgive him for that. I don't see why. The reason why Buhari is electing is because of what I remember Emma Sanusi's words, that people sat in their gardens and were buying foreign exchange. We know that people from around the president were buying foreign exchange at favorable rates and making a killing during that period. And for me, I'm like, you know, that's probably, you know, and for me, I don't see, you know, we tamper too much with, you know, critical things in Nigeria. Look at something like the CBN, which is supposed to be, you know, basically in charge of the framework for, you know, some of our economic and banking policies. I mean, you put somebody who is a commercial banker in that kind of position. I mean, that is an error from the previous administration. But obviously, even when he's there, he has guidance for people who are career civil servants in the CBN or career workers in CBN who obviously have the experience, monetary policy experience. But you can see that he's not taking that advice. If he had taken that advice, he would never have said, let's allow the naira to go into free fall, because you know what will happen immediately is that the naira, as Dangote said, is probably worth maybe about 1,000 naira to $1. Honestly, I don't see, these are the kind of things that worry me. when, I would have expected the president to say, look, at this critical time in our economy, when we're going at maybe 1 or 2%, we need to have some sort of like real radical changes. I need a mind that is beyond just someone who sits down and takes advice from central bankers. I need somebody who has the experience and the knowledge of, how an economy works to come in. And sometimes Emefiele might even be good, but you want somebody better, or you just want somebody fresh, so that there can be a new lease of life. But again, they can continue doing what they want. My prayer is that, the tribunal will kick them out and will have a fresh lease of life. And, I always say, even then, I pray the article will come in and do even much better than them, just to show them, that governance is not, rocket science. It just takes a little bit of heart and, a lot of knowledge to get things to work.
In your opinion, how should the efforts and resources of Nigerians in the diaspora be more effectively harnessed to help the country overcome its not so impressive global image at the moment?
I think that's a pretty, important question. Because, you see, for me, I think that, the people in diaspora as well, they're being fed a lot of lies. That's why I make it, a duty to basically educate people. When I speak to people here, I'm shocked at the things they come up. They say things like, Onogen was in Dubai with Atiku and in that PDP meeting, and, they show pictures of, Peter Obi and says Onogen. And these people actually believe these things. I think that we are sort of like partly responsible in diaspora for destroying Nigeria's image. Because we then feed on these lies. We say somebody drove it to CBN and carted away 500 billion naira in cash. We feed these lies and we continue to tell these lies. We need to retell our story. But obviously, we need a country that works. Because today, honestly, I find a few good stories, but they're coming from individuals rather than from government-led initiatives. And that needs to change because the government has so much more. In terms, I'm not talking about federal, I'm talking about state governments, local governments. They have so much more, power, so much more wealth than individuals. I think, basically, we just need to partner. There are really brilliant people out here as well who have basically given up on the system. But the government needs a new lease of life. It needs to bring in, I remember how people used to leave the UK, the US, Canada in droves to come to Nigeria during Jonathan's era. And now people are, back. I'm here myself, and not even coming to Nigeria to do business. You can't fund. Look, I know people who are funding business in Nigeria, and the businesses keep on crashing. So the truth is that for now, I think everybody's on suspension until we kind of get like a new direction. And if the courts do us a favor and declare Atiku president, I know that he will do well. I know that for one, the economy will grow, and diaspora will begin to take its rightful place. Because a lot of us I have investments in Nigeria that are sitting down there idle, and a lot of us have that, and we would like to see that up and running again. Because the more that happens for us in Nigeria, the more we can put back into society as well. But we'll continue to support people back home. I still support some entrepreneurs, and I'm sure a lot of people here do, and hope that they can win in the tough terrain. But I tell you, it's a tough task. It's almost impossible.
What should be the ideal template for reforming Nigeria's electoral system, in your opinion? And what should be anchored on, for instance, the Justice Uwais report or the 2014 National Conference report?
Yes. You see, I think the National Conference report for me is by far one of the best documents that ever came out of Nigeria. I think it's, why it is? Because they actually, and I followed that conference so well because I had obviously a mentor in the conference that was leading affairs, doing all the, he gave them a secretariat and things like that. Now, it focused on all the previous reports they just didn't wake up and start with it fresh. They focused on all those reports and brought everything into play. And if you look at some of the recommendations, honestly, there's nobody, no decent human being that will see those recommendations and not think that we should implement them in the interest of one Nigeria. I think that everything we do now must be anchored on the 2014 Confab National Conference, and that we must genuinely begin to implement those. And I was hoping that we didn't know we were going to lose the election, but I was hoping that if Jonathan had won his second term, we would have been able to convince the National Assembly to implement some of those things in the interest of Nigeria. And you can see how there's so much fracture with the unity of the country at the moment, because we have ignored these things yet again. I think that for INEC, oh my God, I think INEC, first of all, the president should not have any business with who becomes INEC chairman. I think that's number one. I think number two is that INEC needs to do a clean sweep. I think that, first of all, the bogus electoral numbers, the numbers of registered voters, needs to be pruned. I'll give you an example. Here in the UK, you always get a reminder for you to sign, obviously a card to say you are still on the electoral roll, because you could have died, you could have traveled, you might be working overseas. They do it from on an almost yearly basis. But INEC just registers people, and tomorrow, we've grown from 60 to 84 million, but yet only 20 million people turn up to vote. I think that there's also a bit of fraud in the numbers. I think that needs to be looked in. But, the truth is that INEC too cannot do, even if you put, a saint as chairman of INEC and commissioners and in the polling units, if the politicians have the same mindset that they have today, nothing is going to change in Nigeria. And that's the honest truth. We also need to make sure that the law is very tight and, can clamp down on, all these kind of like electoral fraud and things like that. We need to take these things seriously because they're destroying every other fabric of our society.
Still on the electoral system, looking at the underrepresentation of women, what can be done to support women and encourage more female candidates so that we have a more reflective sphere across the board? And also, you made reference just now to the fractured society, and that's incontrovertible. Right now, the environment, politically and socially, is more divided than ever before. What can be done at this point to unify Nigeria so we can move forward?
Okay, I'll talk about the women. That's an area that's very close to my heart because I see, the role that women play in the households as mothers, as supporters of their husbands and things. I think it's a very crucial role that if we, I've always encouraged the female participation in politics. I think that it's a shame that the numbers are dwindling. And again, 16 years of PDP, we had things like free forms for women. I know they say that's a bit of tokenism, but at the end of the day, it allows more women to participate. And, again, I don't see the president addressing the issue after winning the fraudulent elections or after being declared winner to say, oh, I'm going to do more for women and youth or anything like that. So I don't see this mindset changing. I mean, this is a president that was criticized by supporters for shaking women. I mean, so let us be honest. I mean, you're not going to expect him to, give more women appointments, in his cabinet. It's not going to be, he knows that, the people that follow him, the supporters won't be so crucial. And also, so I think that for us, we need to, I think there's a lot of support coming from, outside the country for women to participate rather than from within the country. I think that needs to change. I think all political parties must adopt a procedure where, a certain amount of women are allowed to run for offices unchallenged. Again, it will all come down to the quality of the women as well. So it's not just helping somebody it's also giving the right people the chance to be able to show what they can do. What was the second question? Sorry, I got a bit lost there.
Our divided society, politically and socially.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, yeah. And honestly, you know what's so funny? I remember President Jonathan being described as clannish while he was in government. And I really, began to question some of those assertions. So now when I see what the country, and that he was dividing the country because he wanted to remain president. And look, let us be honest. We know that the reason why Jonathan was removed was because he was the son of a fisherman from Ijaw land, a minority, not even an ethnic majority. And he wanted to continue in power, and that was just sacrilege to the north. I mean, let us not. And so when you see what has happened in the country, you know that in your heart that there was a good framework for where we are today. I think that going forward again, I keep on talking about this. That there was something they used to say about Buhari in the first few months, body language. The president's body language suggests that he himself is a clan leader. He's you know, like I always tell people, I say, look at something like Leah Sharibu. We know the government paid ransom for the girls to be released, the Dapchi girls. But one girl was not released, and the president could not use his powers and his connections with these kidnappers to get just one Christian girl released. I mean, that is the foundation for this unity. And look at this approach with the Southeast. They're always running down the Southeast. They did not vote for me. They did not. It's like a man that's, you know, is trying to, you know, woo a woman, and the woman is not interested because he has a brash attitude. Rather than looking at yourself and saying, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Why don't these people like me? You are blaming them for not liking you. You know, I've never seen such arrogance in power. I mean, this is, even the military dictators did not have this level of arrogance. I think, for me, it's totally unacceptable. And I don't, honestly, I keep on saying, I don't see Nigeria making progress with things like unity at this time. Because it's almost like every conversation is revolved around, you know, look at the architecture of the security forces. Look at the leadership of the security, the heads of security units. Everybody's from the north, or almost everybody, apart from one from Ekiti State or something. And they're all northern Muslims. Most of them are northern Muslims. I mean, that alone tells a story. Look at the appointments across board. Look at, you know, it's just a mess. And I think, even though people blame the previous administrations for bringing their own people, as they say, but I think what they were doing was correcting this anomaly and just trying to make sure that there was a balance. And we know the Constitution protects these issues, so I don't even understand why we should even be discussing them. And the reason why the Constitution protects these issues is because of this unity that the Constitution sought for us to have, even though the Constitution is not perfect. But at least it wanted us to have an equal opportunity to run the country together.
Well, you talked a bit about ethnic persuasions. You're from the Southwest Ogun State, like myself, and we voted largely for APC. Why are you, a dissenting voice, voting for PDP and supporting PDP?
You see, also, you know, with politics, if the party in Ogun State was AD, and they were the ones that produced the governor and the State House of Assembly members, and they had all the commissioners, you would expect AD to win the election there, even though they had a weak presidential candidate. Look, you know, all politics is local, as they say. I'm not a dissenting voice. I don't think, you see, one thing I always say to people is that it's not even about the APC or the PDP for me, honestly. It's about the human being that you bring to represent you. Honestly, there are probably better people than Buhari in the APC who could have done a better job. But the APC needed to win an election, and the wild card was Buhari. He was the only person who could get that core, you know, the core vote from the north. And that was the plan. But the plan has been a disaster. People will continue to vote for the APC because the APC is feeding them, because people cannot feed themselves anymore. You see politicians in Lagos State, where I play my politics, they campaign to APC to go and, you know, say, align with the APC that they fought for the last 20 years, the APC that has turned Lagos into a waste bin, and, you know, with, you know, all sorts of elephant projects everywhere. You know, it just shows you that there's a lack of, because people are hungry, so everybody's just going to gravitate towards where there's food. And it's unfortunate, but that's what these people have reduced the country to. You know, so for me, I think that, you know, if you did have a free and fair election, even in Ogun State, you allowed people to vote their conscience, you find that the APC would not be in power anywhere. And that's the truth, because they've done quite badly.
I have one final question for you, Mr. Sola. So why do you think that the Northerners keep supporting Buhari if you think that he's of no use?
They don't, you know, this is one thing. Look, Buhari is loved by the North, some of the North. But Buhari, the President Buhari isn't. Look, I went to Bauchi in 2006. I always tell this story, and I want the world to understand that when I went to Bauchi in 2016, I said to people that there is no way the APC will win the election in 2009, because the North is very intolerant with bad governance. There's a lot of poverty in the North, so people feed off crumbs and things like that. You know, but they're very intolerant. They were stoning their governor in 2016, 1 year after he had been in office. When he drove past, they would stone him. So you see, this myth that people voted for Buhari in the North is a big lie. You know, I'll tell you outrightly, people in the North were, yeah, he had some supporters. Obviously, everybody has supporters everywhere. But it is not the whole of the North that voted for Buhari. Buhari didn't win Adamawa State by a mile. Forget the results that you see. Look, you can see what happened in Kano, even with Ganduje. People in Kano is a big population, so obviously we expected that Buhari would have at least 60% of the votes in places like Kano, you know, because obviously he's a very popular figure as a person. So people are not voting. If you ask the average northerner to vote for Buhari as a president in terms of what he has achieved, you will not get a single vote because they're intolerant about it. Is that love, that genuine love that they have for him as a person. Because people still believe that Buhari doesn't steal. It's just a coincidence that every time he's in government, that money gets missing around him. There's always scandals around him, you know, with money. But people believe that Buhari as a man is basically innocent. He's free from guilt. He doesn't steal. He's, you know, a model citizen. And you cannot change that belief with people that choose to believe that. I'm not going to take that away from him. But the truth is that if they were voting for Buhari as Buhari, president of Nigeria, I promise you, Buhari will not even get 10% of the votes in the north. Because people are suffering. There's look, 13 million out-of-school children in Nigeria. And a large percentage of them will be in the north. 13 million. You know what 13 million people is? Children. You know, so when you think about it, the north is suffering from the bad economic policies, from the insecurity more than us in the south. So the truth is that if Buhari is just still riding on a bit of goodwill, boy, that is why we know that he could not have won the election, because the suffering, the anger, you can see some of the things people are, even in Kano, were saying after the elections with the Ganduje election. The anger is so much that you know that people are just intolerant of nonsense. They are tired.
Thank you,
and I hope that the court will do Nigerians, a favor by removing this government. Thank you.
Well, we wait to see what the tribunal decides. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Sola Kuti.
Thank you, Mr. Kuti. We appreciate your insight. It's time now for a short break on the morning show. When we return, Arise News analyst Charles Ohaku will be joining us to review some of the top newspaper headlines from across the country. Do stay with us.